You've seen it before. Someone blurts out whatever comes to mind without a second thought. They don't filter their words, don't weigh the consequences, and don't care how their words land. It's not just about saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. It's about a complete lack of awareness. A fool doesn't pause to consider whether what they're saying is true, helpful, or necessary. They just talk. They dominate conversations, interrupt constantly, and believe their opinion is always the most important. But here's the kicker. The more they talk, the more obvious their ignorance becomes. Wise people know the value of silence. They listen, observe, and measure their words carefully. They understand that the right words at the right time can change everything, while careless words can destroy relationships, opportunities, and respect. A fool, on the other hand, is their own worst enemy. They'll speak with absolute confidence on topics they barely understand, offer unsolicited advice, or make promises they can't keep. And when things go south, they blame everyone but themselves. Pay attention to how people speak. Do they think before they talk? Do they choose their words wisely, or do they fill the air with empty noise? The fool reveals themselves not in their silence, but in their inability to embrace it. A fool isn't just someone who makes mistakes. We all do that. The real mark of a fool is someone who refuses to learn from those mistakes, who pushes away wisdom and correction as if it's an attack rather than a gift. They see advice as criticism, correction as an insult, and learning as a waste of time. Tell a wise person they're wrong and they'll listen, reflect, and adjust. Tell a fool they're wrong and they'll lash out, defend their ignorance, or worse, double down on their mistakes. Instead of seeking growth, they cling to their own flawed thinking because admitting they were wrong is too much for their fragile ego. The truth is, a fool doesn't want to be right. They just want to feel right. They just want to feel right. They surround themselves with people who agree with them, who feed their delusions, who let them stay comfortable in their ignorance. But comfort isn't growth, and ignorance never leads to success. Look around. How do people respond to correction? Do they take it with humility, or do they fight against it like their life depends on it? A fool would rather sink with their pride than rise with wisdom. And that's why they stay stuck. A fool never takes responsibility. When things go wrong, it's never their fault. It's always the system, their boss, their family, or just bad luck. They have an excuse for everything, and their failures are always someone else's doing. But here's the truth. Life doesn't happen to you. It happens because of you. Wise people know this. They own their choices, their mistakes, and their outcomes. They don't waste time pointing fingers because they're too busy fixing the problem. But a fool, they would rather sit in denial than face the hard truth. And that's the irony. By refusing to take responsibility, they give up their own power. If everything is someone else's fault, that means they're never in control, never capable of change, never the master of their own destiny. They stay stuck in the same cycles, repeating the same cycles, repeating the same mistakes because in their mind, there's nothing they need to fix. And when someone tries to hold them accountable, they either play the victim or go on the attack. That's why fools never grow. They never improve, never break out of their patterns, because they refuse to admit they are the common denominator in their problems. If you want to spot a fool, look at how they respond when life gets tough. Do they take ownership, or do they shift the blame? That answer will tell you everything you need to know. A fool lives for the moment, chasing pleasure while ignoring responsibility. They seek instant gratification, quick thrills, easy escapes, and temporary highs, without thinking about the long-term consequences. whether it's wasting money on things they don't need, indulging in destructive habits, or procrastinating important tasks for entertainment, they choose comfort over growth every single time. But here's what they don't realize. Success isn't built on pleasure. It's built on discipline. Wise people understand the value of sacrifice. They know that sometimes you have to trade short term fun for long-term gain. They invest in their future, whether it's through learning, working hard, or making smart decisions. A fool, on the other hand, avoids anything that requires effort. They'll binge, watch TV instead of working on their goals, spend money they don't have to impress people they don't like, or waste years on meaningless distractions, while others build legacies. And when life catches up with them, they act surprised. They wonder why they're stuck, why they're struggling, why nothing is changing. The answer is simple. They chose pleasure over progress. And until they break that habit, they will always be left behind. Want to know if someone is a fool? Look at how they spend their time. Do they invest in themselves, or do they waste their days chasing momentary happiness at the cost of their future? You've heard the saying, show me your friends, and I'll show you your future. A fool doesn't just act foolish. They surround themselves with people who think, speak, and behave the same way. Why? Because it's comfortable. A fool doesn't want to be challenged. They don't want to be held accountable. They want validation, even if it means staying stuck in ignorance and mediocrity. They choose friends who enable their bad decisions, who encourage their reckless behavior, and who make them feel good about staying the same. But here's the truth. Who you spend time with will either elevate you or drag you down. Wise people seek out those who challenge them to grow, who hold them to higher standards, who push them towards success. They understand that their environment shapes their future. A fool, however, will avoid people who tell them the truth, who encourage discipline, or who expect better from them. Instead, they surround themselves with distractions, people who gossip, complain, waste time, and make excuses. And the worst part, they mistake that for loyalty. They believe sticking with the wrong crowd means being real, when in reality, it just means staying stuck. Look at the people around you. Are they lifting you up or holding you back? Because if you're surrounded by fools, it's only a matter of time before you become one too. A fool drifts through life without direction, living as if tomorrow will magically take care of itself. They don't set goals, don't save money, don't invest in personal growth, and don't think about long-term consequences. Their motto, I'll figure it out later. But later never comes. They wake up one day wondering why they're struggling, why they're behind, why opportunities seem to slip through their fingers. The answer is simple. They never prepared. Wise people understand that success isn't an accident. It's intentional. They make plans, set goals, and take steps toward a better future. They know that small, consistent actions lead to massive results over time. A fool, on the other hand, avoids responsibility until it's too late. They waste money instead of saving, neglect their health until it fails, ignore opportunities until they disappear. And when reality finally hits, they panic. They look for shortcuts, quick fixes, or someone else to bail them out. But life doesn't reward neglect. It punishes it. The difference between a fool and a wise person is simple. One prepares, the other procrastinates. Look at how someone approaches their future. Day, they take it seriously. Or do they act like life is just one big game? Because in the end, those who fail to plan are planning to fail. A fool is a slave to their emotions. They explode in anger at the slightest inconvenience, let jealousy poison their relationships, and allow fear to stop them from taking action. Instead of mastering their emotions, they let their emotions master them. And the result? Chaos. Every decision they make is driven by impulse rather than wisdom. They lash out, make reckless choices, and burn bridges without a second thought, only to regret it later. But by then, the damage is already done. Wise people, on the other hand, understand the power of emotional control. They don't ignore their feelings, but they don't let their feelings dictate their actions either. They pause, reflect, and choose their responses carefully. They understand that not every battle is worth fighting. Not every slight deserves a reaction, and not every feeling needs to be acted upon. A fool, however, is unpredictable. One moment they're up, the next they're down. Their life is a constant roller coaster of drama, fueled by emotions they refuse to manage. And here's the hard truth. Until they learn to control their emotions, they will never have control over their life. If you want to know if someone is a fool, watch how they handle frustration, setbacks, and criticism. Do they stay composed and think before reacting? Or do they let their emotions turn them into their own worst enemy? The ultimate sign of a fool. They repeat the same mistakes over and over again, expecting a different result. They date the same toxic people, fall for the same scams, make the same financial blunders, and trust the same financial blunders, and trust the same wrong individuals, then act surprised when things fall apart. But here's the brutal truth. Mistakes aren't the problem. Everyone makes them. The problem is refusing to learn from them. Wise people analyze their failures. They ask what went wrong. What can I do differently next time? And most importantly, they apply that knowledge. A fool, on the other hand, ignores the warning signs. They live in a cycle of poor decisions, blaming bad luck instead of taking accountability. They think life is against them when in reality, they're just unwilling to change. Growth requires humility, self-awareness, and a willingness to adapt. But a fool clings to their ways, convinced they know best, even when the evidence says otherwise. And that's why they stay stuck. Or do they ignore the lesson and do it all over again? Because in the end, life will keep teaching you the same lesson until you finally learn it. At the end of the day, wisdom and foolishness aren't about intelligence. They're about choices. A fool isn't necessarily someone who lacks knowledge. They're someone who refuses to seek it, refuses to listen, and refuses to grow. They let pride, emotion, and short-term thinking control their lives, while the wise learn, adapt, and take responsibility. The good news: no one is doomed to be a fool forever. Change is always possible. The key is self-awareness. If you recognize some of these signs in yourself, don't ignore them, address them. Start listening more than you speak. Learn from criticism instead of rejecting it. Take responsibility for your actions instead of blaming others. Choose progress over pleasure, preparation over procrastination, and wisdom over impulse. Because the difference between a fool and a wise person isn't their circumstances. It's their willingness to change. So ask yourself, are you learning, growing, and making better choices every day? Or are you repeating the same mistakes and expecting a different outcome. The answer will determine your future.